Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhary. Thank you for watching Inquiry. Today, the focus is on the impact of the world's largest lockdown. Estimates vary, but anything between 100 lakh to 200 lakh Indians are on the road trying to get home. India is looking at a negative GDP growth, and almost 8 out of 10 Indians have lost their jobs during the lockdown. We're looking at a terrible tragedy as well as a terrible economic disaster. The Modi government has responded with a 20 lakh crore relief and stimuli package. But is this package enough to mitigate the crisis? Should India be printing money? Should India be calling in the army to help manage the migrant crisis? To discuss these issues, I'm delighted to introduce our guest at Inquiry today, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, former Finance Minister of India and a former member of the BJP party. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sinha. So, Mr. Sinha, you've been writing again and again about how there needs to be a very robust relief measure for the pandemic and the lockdown. Now that the government has rolled out its entire package over 5 days, do you feel that enough has been done to mitigate the impact of the lockdowns?
No, quite clearly not. And I say this with a great deal of sadness because we all knew or should have known that the lockdown will lead to displacement. Most of all for the poorest of the poor, which includes the migrant workers, the daily wage earners, the small farmers, the unemployed youth, whole range of them, covering almost half the population. Now, we didn't think things through with the result that we imposed a lockdown without anticipating what the consequences will be. And when the consequences started unfolding, we remained completely indifferent, in fact, callous towards it. So then, about 45, 50 days later, when the poor migrant workers had exhausted all their savings, they couldn't pay rent, they had no food, the only option left with them was to start walking. And that is the spectacle, the sorry spectacle that we saw and we are still seeing on the roads of India. And therefore, what should have been the first responsibility of the government? 20 lakh, 25 lakh, 40 lakh, doesn't matter. The point is, the first thing which should have been taken care of was the migrant workers on the roads.
Yes.
And 54 days down the line, they're still on the road. Today one saw horrendous scenes of the police beating them up with their lathis.
Yeah, so the scale of this tragedy is just absolutely stark, and it's a shame that we're seeing this day in and day out. We've talked about the trains, but there's so much of argument going on over whether the states will receive the trains or not. So I wanted to ask you one thing, that typically when there's a disaster, humanitarian disaster, we call in the paramilitary and the army. The entire lockdown has been evoked under the aegis of a Disaster Management Act. If you were in power today, sir, would you call in the army and the paramilitary to sort this?
Absolutely. I mean, I have written about it and I have said it publicly that what we needed to do many, many weeks ago, what we need to do now is to call in the army. The army is stationed all over the country. The paramilitary forces are stationed all over the country. There is a provision in our law for cooperation between the army and the civilian authorities. So let this cooperation be established. My own entire administrative and political experience, Shoma, would suggest that if the government showed the willpower and asked the army to come in, the paramilitary to come in, and told the civilian authorities, you commandeer all the buses and other vehicles in your jurisdiction. The army and the paramilitary will come with their own resources. Then it is possible that within the next 24 hours, and I'm saying it with the fullest sense of responsibility, that within the next 24 hours, the army will get into operation and all the migrants who are compelled to walk on the roads will be given dignity, will be given medical care, will be given food and water, and would be taken to their destinations. This is what we should have done long ago. This is what we should do now.
Yes.
Please call in the army. We asked the army, the Air Force, to honor the frontline medical workers, didn't we? And
Yes.
the helicopters flew in the air and dropped rose petals and other flower petals on them.
Right.
So why can't we call the army today and tell them this is the problem, solve it for us over the next 24 hours, 48 hours?
Because the scale is so huge. Mr. Piyush Goyal said that there are almost 60 lakh migrants that want to go back just to the state of Bengal. And he said we would need 100 trains plying every day for 15, 20 days just to take the migrants back to Bengal. The scale of this disaster is so huge.
Yeah, I'll give you the figure. For instance, Jharkhand. Jharkhand has about 7 lakh migrant workers working in other parts of the country. So far, they have been able to bring in about 80,000 with all the trains which have been put in service. Now, trains alone will not do. We have to realize this. It's going to take many, many weeks for the trains to bring all the migrants home. Therefore, we need extra resources, and therefore, we need the army. The army moves in its trucks.
Yes.
Let the trucks come. The paramilitary moves in trucks. Let the paramilitary trucks come. And then we commandeer all the civilian vehicles, the buses, etc. Whatever it needs should be done in order to ensure that there are no more migrants walking without food and water on the roads in such misery. This is a national shame. And I'll go to the extent of saying this is a national crime that we are committing.
Cause little did we know the good times come and go, but the best is yet to come.
So, sir, politically, the government has had carte blanche from whether it's the World Bank, the IMF, different political parties, economists of every denomination, industrialists, Mr. Azim Premji, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, bankers, everybody has been asking the government to spend, even print money if needed, but put money into people's hands. There's never been a greater consensus on a piece of action. So please help us understand, why is the government not doing it?
I'm really at a loss, Shoma, for any reasonable package of financial relief and regeneration. It's very important that the government should, from its coffers, mind you, spend in excess of 10 to 15 lakh crore rupees to begin with. Now, quite clearly, that money is not there in the system at the moment. Government cannot go to the banks and start borrowing left, right, and center because they need their own liquidity. Therefore, I had suggested that there should be, RBI should be asked to print notes and make it available to the government. Now, what will be the consequence? The consequence will be, one, the fiscal deficit of the government will go up substantially. We should not mind it. We should not care for the rating agencies. The rating agencies are a discredited lot after the 2008 global financial crisis. So let's not bother about it. These are exceptional times calling for exceptional measures. Number two, when you push money into the market, there is a pressure on inflation. So we'll have to take care of that by ensuring the supply chain and making sure that at least the supply of essentials is uninterrupted and it reaches the people. When I'm hungry, what is it that I do when I get money in my pocket? I'll go for essential consumption. And therefore, the essential consumption shops should be open, food should be available. And the other point which I'd like to make to you is, Government of India has today something like 10 crore tons of food grains in its godown. It's an embarrassment of riches. Why aren't we making this food liberally available, both to the state governments, as well as to the public distribution system, as well as to the market, which will ensure that food grain prices do not rise? This is something that we have tested and tried during the Vajpayee regime, that when we had massive droughts in this country, we pushed a lot of grain into the system so that prices did not rise. So therefore, there are various ways in which the deleterious impact of printing currency and bringing it into the market can be taken care of. The economists have suggested it, people like me have suggested it, and there is no reason why it should not be done.
So, barring this fear of the rating agencies, is there any other? Because the one thing one can hand the Modi government is that they are politically astute. One cannot understand why they would risk the kind of distress and acute pain that almost 80-90% of the country is feeling today. If, as you say, the recourse is so simple, why would government not do it, sir? Do you have any inkling into the psyche?
I must confess, I have none. And I can't see any reason why the government is vacillating on this issue. We have some of the brightest economists, not only within the country, but outside also, Nobel laureates and whatnot. Has the government reached out to them? Has there been a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have organized with these economists? Nothing that I am aware of. Now,
they set up those task forces, sir. So, there were many committees that were apparently working.
We can have any number of task force of journalist bureaucrats. That is not going to help. I don't know what is holding the government back, because nobody is going to criticize the government if the fiscal deficit were to go up, which in any case will go up this exceptional year. There is no way the government can contain it within 5 or 6% of the GDP. There is just no way, because there is going to be a complete collapse of the tax receipts. All other receipts are going to dwindle. So therefore, the entire budget is completely irrelevant now. There is absolutely no problem in allowing the fiscal deficit to go up. We were talking about 5% of GDP. 5% would mean what? 10 lakh crore rupees from the government's coffers. Fiscal relief is completely inadequate because the government has held back, it seems, from spending from the budget and has put all the burden on the banks and financial institutions, which means what? The banks and financial institutions are not going to give doles. They're not going to give money for free. They will give loans. And therefore, if anyone else in the system wants to borrow, then we'll go to a bank and borrow. If we don't want to borrow, then nobody can force us to borrow. A loan means that the loan will have to be repaid.
Yes.
There is no indication so far that this loan also will become available at a concessional rate of interest.
So I just want to come back to the migrant issue. Nirmala Sitharaman and Mr. Modi said that they were going to do something about it. They've put out the issue of the portable ration card, which is good, but it'll only get done by January. They have created affordable rental housing, but that's again something in the future. They've put 40,000 crore into Narega, and they have said that they will put 5 kgs of rice or wheat and 1 kg of chana to a family for a month. Is that adequate for what has happened to 80% of this country?
No, clearly it is not adequate. And you were asking me the reason. I'll just point out one thing. Some 24 workers were killed in an accident in Uttar Pradesh, eastern Uttar Pradesh.
Yes.
Shouldn't the finance minister have begun her press conference by condoling the death of the migrant workers on the roads? Did she, in all the 5 press conferences that she addressed, has she said a word about condoling the death of the migrant workers? No. What does it show? It shows that there is no sensitivity, there is no empathy. If there was, then these things would not be missing. So even today you and I are discussing calling in the army. Do I have to advise the government? Do we have to advise the government to call in the army? Did you and I advise the government that the Air Force should be called to shower flower petals on the frontline workers? No, the government thought about it itself. Yeah. So therefore, why aren't they doing it? You asked me for an explanation. The only explanation that I have is complete lack of empathy on the part of the government. or the suffering of the migrant workers.
So, sir, I just want to understand the NREGA allotment, because that is a welcome move. It will provide work for people when they reach home, and millions. There's a kind of reverse migration happening now. Psychologically, we keep talking about the people who've died, but the psychological scarring of, we keep speaking of them as poor people, but this is the workforce of the country. These are people who were earning their own living legitimately. Yes, by the pandemic, but also by a decision of government. So when they go back, sir, I also wanted to ask that what is the relief that they are being given? Is there anything that I have missed? Because it could be that they will go back to a red zone, in which case they won't be able to work. So even the NREGA money is linked to their ability to work, which is a government decision in terms of whether a certain activity will be allowed or not. So in the short term, sir, is this going to have impact?
I am strongly of the opinion that every able-bodied person in this country should be asked to work.
Yes.
Now, everyone who is going back to their villages will be in need of employment. So therefore, we have the employment scheme for the rural areas. I had made 3-4 suggestions. At the moment, it is limited to 100 days work. Number 2, I had suggested that 20 rupees increase in the daily wages is too meager. It should be raised by at least 50 rupees. And I had also suggested that there should be a similar scheme for the urban areas, because there are many people who will go into the urban areas and they also will be in need of employment. So let's have an urban employment scheme. Additionally, there should be an income support scheme for the educated unemployed. We should try and give them employment, but we can't. Then we should have a basic income scheme for them. The issue today, Shoma, and from before, when we were experiencing slowdown in our economy, the issue is one of demand. And as various economists have pointed out, we are working hard on the supply side, which is not going to create demand. The monetary measures of the banks, Reserve Bank of India, they are not going to create demand. Demand will be created if there is money in people's pockets. And therefore, people have been advocating that we should give them direct cash. I am of the opinion that we should give them direct cash through employment, and we should also make food grains available to them, of which we have plenty. A combination of the two, which we have tried during the Vajpayee. It had worked very successfully. This is the recipe that I will strongly recommend. Now, 40,000 crore allocation for Manrega is a good thing to begin with.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether going down the line, going forward, it will be sufficient. Government should give an assurance that whatever the states need by way of additional resources for the employment schemes, both rural and urban, will be made available.
But sometimes there'll be criticism that it's easy to make these suggestions when one is not sitting in a seat of power, because when you're in government, you have to balance many contending issues. So, sir, I'll ask you that, are you responsibly stating that even if you were sitting in chair as a finance minister, you think there's enough fiscal space for the country to do this?
Two points which I'd like to make. One is that I have sat in that chair for almost 5 years, and I have done all these things that I'm advocating today. Short of calling the army, we didn't have this kind of a problem, but we had other kinds of problems. And I have done all this. I'm saying it out of my own personal experience. We made food grains available at PDS prices to market operators. That's how prices were controlled. In 2002-03, Shoma, we had a deficit of 40 lakh tons in our food grain production, 4 million tons. But there was no inflation that time because we managed it through the release of grains. So this is a resource which has been used in the past. This is a resource we should use now, along with cash and covering all sections. And I'm telling you today, why talk only of the migrant workers or the daily wage earners? The lower middle class today is in dire straits.
The CMIE put out that now unemployment rate, which was already at a 40-year high, has now become almost 25%. So that's 1 out of 4 Indians have lost their jobs in these 50, 60 days.
Did the government talk only about a figure of 8 crore workers? Whatever provision, food, grain provision they have made, talks of only 8 crore workers. Whereas there are estimates that something like 15, 20 crore people have become unemployed during this lockdown. And as you said, they were legally earning their living. Now they have been deprived of it. So whose responsibility is it today to look after them? It is the government's responsibility.
So, sir, in these 5 days, there have been a sweeping set of reforms, administrative, executive decisions, which seem to be happening without obviously any consultation or no parliamentary action. Now, out of those, sir, which do you think are good ones? Everyone today hailed the actions taken in the agricultural sector as the 1991 moment in agriculture. So let's just shift focus to farmers. Do you think enough has been done for farmers?
I will go a step further. Why talk only of 1991? This is the New Deal moment of President Roosevelt. Nothing like this has been seen before in the whole world. India has shown the way. Put any words, they are empty sounding, mean nothing. What I am saying is, out of this 21 lakh crore, which is the total which the finance minister gave, as you said, 70,000, some people are saying 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore. Government itself has put a figure of 4 lakh, a little over 4 lakh crore as additional borrowing for this year. So if this is going to take care of the shortfall in receipts in the budget, tax receipts and other receipts, then the government perhaps is determined that we will not allow this 4 lakh barrier to be crossed, which is 2% of the GDP, and clearly inadequate. As far as the economic reforms are concerned, they are a recycling of old promises made. For instance, we tried it in our time. I was very keen that APMC Act should be abolished, but these are state government acts. So it's not possible for the government of India to abolish them, but they are good ideas. They have been tried over the last 20 years. Atmanirbhar Bharat. It's a concept which predates our independence.
Swadeshi, yeah.
Yeah, self-reliance. Self-reliance was the key word in all our economic thinking. Still is. But then credit goes to the government that they are able to wrap up all the old concepts in such new wrapping that we think we are getting something.
I just wanted to stick with the farmer issue, sir. I just want to contrast 2 figures. Can you help us understand it? That the government has promised that it will spend 50,000 crore on creating the infrastructure necessary to evacuate coal. But Operation Green, which is infrastructure for transporting perishable fruit and vegetables and agriculture, which affects everybody, the commitment is of 500 crores, sir. So is this, again, I just first want to ask, am I missing something? Because it seems a really bewildering figure, sir.
I don't think you're missing on anything. 50,000 crore, 100,000 crore for rural infrastructure. This is all a burden which has been put on NABARD. NABARD is supposed to finance all this, and NABARD gives loans to state governments for such projects. It is not money which is made available freely. It's not a dole. It's not a grant. It's a loan. Therefore, all this is going to take time. You have seen, I have seen on national TV channels, the sight of farmers throwing their produce on the roads, plowing them in the field because they did not get the market. And I know from personal experience from various parts of the country that farmers are not able to sell their produce, especially the perishable. So they have lost money. Now the Kisan Samman Yojana is an old scheme. What have you done? You have just front-loaded a part of it to put money in their...
That's a minuscule amount. To give 2,000 rupees is like 500 rupees into people.
So recycling of old ideas, minuscule amounts of allocation based on front-loading budgetary provisions. This is the game that the government has played to befool the people.
But sir, just in to be fair, even if they were front-loading provisions which mitigates adequately, then that's fine.
I have no quarrel absolutely with that.
Yes, but,
front load, but they should admit that we are front loaded.
yes, but
They should not say that this is what we did in the month of
sure, sir.
April. This is what we've done so far. And calculate. It's not an aggregate. You and I have studied in schools where you have a mark in this subject, that subject, and then there is the aggregate mark which decides your class. What the finance minister has done is aggregating everything.
So I just want to make the point that whether it's front loading or it's, this 20 lakh crore spectacle, whether it's actually bearing out, that's really for the commentariat and for economists and journalists to agonize over. The point is that, is it achieving what it needs to? The point is that it doesn't seem to be mitigating the immediate disaster that people are experiencing. For instance, even for the MSMEs, the 3 lakh crore that's apparently going to be extended to them, already 5 lakh crore is owed to them. So each utterance seems to have a back tail to it. So the question I want to ask you, sir, is that of all the provisions, which ones do you think are adequate? Which are the good moves that the government has made?
There are a number of medium-term and long-term steps which have been announced. Many of them are good steps. I have no quarrel with them. That the easier availability of loans, the raising of Manrega allocation, the medium-term and long-term reform statements. Nobody has any problem.
The portable card, the portable ration card is a very important one.
But if somebody were to appear before me and say that we have provided the panacea for the immediate suffering of the people, I would have to disagree. And in the long term, that famous saying that in the long run, we are all dead.
In the long run.
Who's in the long run?
Yes.
What we want is here and now.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the labor reforms. This is something that successive governments, whether it was under UPA, whether it was under yours, labor reform has been the big catchword like GST was. But they've pushed through the labor reform through an ordinance in UP and MP. To someone like me, it was a shocking move in the midst of this to want to take away minimum rights, minimum wages, increase working hours, have no overtime, no sanitation, no creches, no recourse to courts, and that this is a way of wooing industry. Do you agree with it, sir? And responsibly, given that you yourself have all wanted labor reforms, do you think this is what you would have wanted?
No, I did talk about labor reforms in my budget speeches. It was not possible to move forward because of massive opposition that we faced. But we did not try to do things by stealth. We'll either do it openly or not do it at all. So therefore, we did not succeed. But this is labor market reform by stealth. They have taken advantage of the current situation and done something which constitutional experts tell me are completely unconstitutional.
But
Why?
Sir, I just, for one moment, if I may interrupt, let's for a moment leave aside the manner in which they have done it, which has been by stealth, by ordinance, in a time of great crisis. Just examine the merits of it, sir. Is this the kind of labor reform you would have wanted to push through?
Quite clearly not. And I don't think either in our regime, that is Vajpayee's regime, or during the UPA regime, anyone thought of abolishing any of the welfare measures which are meant for the working class. That was not our intent.
It was just hire and fire, the right
No,
to...
No, not even hire and fire. It was to raise the number of workers from 100 to 1,000, so that the bigger units are completely covered. The smaller units have some leeway, and they are not subject to many of the unnecessary hundreds of inspections which are there under the various labor laws. So this would have led to regular increase in regular employment, because after all, as we know, only 7%, 6% of our labor force is regularly employed. The rest is all in the informal sector. So we should be able to cover them, but nobody ever tried to touch the laws which are meant for the welfare of the working class.
I think it was really important that Azim Premji put out an article where he said that it was a false choice to present this as a way of wooing industry or making. So I just want to ask you one more question, which is the Essential Commodities Act. Removing that, is that something that was universally declared as a good move on the part of the government?
I have no objection to that. The main provision which decided how much stock a trader can hold is contained in Section 7 of the Essential Commodities Act. So we had done away with that. Because what was the argument? The argument was that we had moved into an economy of surpluses instead of facing an economy of shortages. Subsequently, in the UPA regime, when we faced some shortages, that provision was brought back. So I have no quarrel with abolishing the Essential Commodities Act or whatever provision they want to abolish, because again, we are in a surplus zone. It is an economy of surpluses and there is no need for a draconian provision.
So, sir, there's been some focus on the migrants and on farmers and vendors, fishers. But, sir, there is also the middle class, which is the working class that pay taxes. I'll come to industry. But you've already mentioned that there's no provision for unemployed, educated youth. But there's also in retail, in the aviation sector, in the hospitality sector, there are certain sectors that are deeply impacted by this, sir, and a huge loss of jobs. Again, if you were in the finance minister's seat right now, what provision would you make for this sector?
First of all, we have to ensure that these open as soon as possible. Now, what has happened is that we have extended the lockdown another 2 weeks. So we are going to remain a closed country for another 2 weeks. The transport, tourism, hospitality sector has suffered the most during the lockdown period. And they will need to be helped. It's not merely a question of loans. Who is paying their wages? And I'll point out something else. The micro units, the small units, they have not paid the wages of their workers for the months of March and April. That's why the workers were forced to leave.
Yes.
Now, who is going to pay them? Because they have worked, but they have not been paid. So it's very important that the government takes the responsibility to take care of and pay the wages and the salaries of those who have not been paid. Merely telling the enterprises that you pay them is not going to work.
So, yeah, we didn't address, so sir, that's the blue collar workers, but even white collar workers are losing their jobs. Like in America, it's almost 30 million people. I don't know the division of numbers here in terms of how many white collar people have lost their jobs, but just anecdotally, one is hearing of a lot of layoffs. So, what is possible, sir? And we can keep saying the government should do this. At each juncture, I'm asking you, are you responsibly saying that there's enough money and enough space to be able to do this?
We can find the resources. After all, it was not on my advice that the government decided to raise its borrowing for the current year from 8 lakh to 12 lakh crore. What does that show? That the government is aware that the fiscal deficit is going to go up considerably, drastically. And therefore, I'm saying it with the fullest sense of responsibility that this is the time to help the people. It is not the time to look at your fiscal deficit. It is not the time to bother about other things. ये आग का दरिया है और डूब के निकलना है.
So today we are seeing the importance of the welfare state, the NREGA program, the food security program, all the provisions that are necessary to create a basic, safety net under the lives of citizens. And we keep talking of them as poor people, but they're citizens, they're workers. But sir, there's been resistance to that across governments. Even in your time, sir, there was a lot of opposition. People used to call it dole, called it, that it'll create inflation, it's wasteful expenditure, it'll create a lazy psyche. Today, we are seeing the importance of it, sir. Would you admit that you too have moved away from earlier positions that you used to have?
I think, the one lesson that we have learned from this crisis is that a welfare state in a country like India is extremely important. We must be ready for all contingencies. After all, when the nation's borders are threatened and security is threatened, haven't finance ministers said that we are committing these resources, and if needed, we'll commit more resources to defend the country. Similarly, today, there should be no limit on expenditure which should be incurred by the government on these items like the welfare of the people, feeding them, clothing them, making sure that they are able to lead a dignified life. So this is something which is very necessary. We can quarrel with the details of what the welfare state should actually do for its citizens. But I would say that the infrastructure for welfare, which was put together by the or during the UPA regime, has come in very handy today.
What are the new directions that Indian economy should be taking? Ratin Roy has repeatedly been saying that there's a break in demand because we are trying to force consumption in areas where there cannot be consumption, that we should focus on health, education, shelter, housing, where there's a genuine demand. Also, that there's some talk of using this crisis to rethink the priorities of Indian economy altogether. Would you put out 3 or 4 big ideas, sir, which you think should happen?
We should be able to provide employment to every able-bodied person, right? Now, what is that able-bodied person going to do? Suppose we have a provision of 1 lakh crore through Manrega, and it is going to increase. What should these people be doing? They should be creating durable rural infrastructure. Durable rural infrastructure, which will make the life of the people in the villages easier. So this is one thing which I would have done. I had said in an article, there could be a paucity of funds, there could be a paucity of projects, but there is no paucity of needs. We can use this opportunity to start fulfilling those needs. National infrastructure like roads, bridges, etc., railways, strengthening of whole lot of things could be done. New housing, for instance, is extremely important. I would have laid the highest emphasis on meeting the essential needs of the people of our country, especially in the rural areas, through whatever funds would have become available to meet this crisis.
If one thing COVID has shown us is the interconnectedness of all our lives, we are not seeing the importance of the climate crisis. We're not focusing on the fact that water tables are going down or that surface water is polluted, and that rural infrastructure could actually end up creating the kind of water security that this country needs.
I have been a great advocate for many years now of a new scheme which has been introduced, but it has not been effective, of a Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Now, like the National Rural Roads Program, this could have been financed 100% by the Government of India. And what would have this led to? This would have created water bodies in the rural areas, which would have also helped the recharge of the groundwater resources. Today, what? We have 46% of our arable land which receives irrigation. What about the balance 54? So there's so much work to be done on irrigation, on drinking water, on connectivity, on health, on education. And I, as a Lok Sabha MP, have had experience of girls crying out for education in the rural areas, traveling 7, 8, 10 kilometers to go to the nearest middle school. Why can't we improve our education infrastructure, taking advantage of this?
So in fact, sir, I just want to put out this idea that we've been hearing for many, many decades, the idea of the trickle-down theory, and we've seen it fail in many ways. Of course, it has had impacts, but we've seen great consolidation of wealth. And we've seen the poor get poorer in many ways, that maybe it's time for a trickle up, that if you look after the base of the pyramid, then prosperity will trickle upwards, because that's where demand will come from. Is that a fair idea to put out, sir?
Absolutely. You know how Galbraith had described trickle down? He said it's like feeding oats to the horses so that it ultimately reaches the sparrows. So trickle down is a discredited theory. Nobody should believe in trickle down. Trickle up is a very wholesome idea. Strengthen your base so that you can build the pyramid of prosperity.
Thank you very, very much, sir, for making
And
it. Thank you.